Hi, this is Craig Stevens again, and this podcast we're going to look at goalless versus goal-bound. And if you look at the picture at westbrookstevens.com/organizational.htm, you'll find figure SD9 way down in the middle of the page somewhere. So look for SD9 under structural dilemmas and you'll find it. This is the difference between two extremes. One's goalless and the other is goal-bound. I drew a picture of a little pyramid. The base of the pyramid is goalless. It's very broad. And the top of the pyramid is goal-bound. It's to a narrow point. Now, you got to find some happy medium. You got to balance all of these, right? So if you have goalless, few people know the goals. There's no goals. They don't know what to do. So you don't know how to measure the performance. You don't know when you're effective. You don't know when you're efficient. You don't know a whole lot because you're goalless, right? If you're goal-bound, then sometimes people will hold those goals until they're long outdated. And it's the equivalent of stifling change because you're goal-bound. So you'll cling to outdated goals, and therefore you'll not be competitive after a few years. Especially in the 21st century, you can't be goal-bound, right? Both require planning and changing in order to find something in the middle that will relate to the organization. One's related to more organic organizational structures. The other's related to a more mechanistic organizational structure. And so goallessness, you find more in an organic organization, and goal-bound, you can find more in a mechanistic organization. So those are two things to look for. You got to find it's a structural dilemma that you have to balance. The next slide, that was SD9. The next slide is SD10. This one is called irresponsible versus unresponsive. Now, if you have an adherence to strict rules and regulations, you can create so much red tape that you would be unresponsive if somebody wants to come in and ask, your customer wants to come in and ask for a special favor. Goal plating is a term often used with project management. Can you imagine a scope of something you're trying to do? You're being paid to provide a certain product and a certain service to a customer, and this is your project. Now, if you go in and do everything the customer wants in addition to your scope, and you please the customer, is that good or bad? Well, it's good for the customer on the customer side, but on your side, you may lose your company from it, because if you do that and continuously work outside, above and beyond the scope, you're making the customer happy for a season, but you're going bankrupt at the same time. So the process of doing that, giving more than what's in the scope, is called goal plating. Now, if you do that, you can alienate people, because the people within your company who depend on you to make the decisions and your company goes bankrupt, they lose their job. Now, you can alienate people when you're unresponsive, and that's really where alienation is, because you're too bureaucratic and you're too rigid, and people feel like you don't care. Now, red tape we talked about. Inconsistency and favoritism we didn't talk about. Can you imagine that if you're in a highly organic organization, you're almost irresponsible in how you treat your own company's finances, and you go in and you try to support customers all you can, but you can't do it in a uniform way or you go bankrupt. You can only do it for the special customers. So it's inconsistent, and it looks like favoritism, and that word gets around too. So you think you're building a good reputation for yourself, and what you're actually doing is, as the customers talk, you're building a bad reputation, because more people will complain than will give you praise. So you can't look like you're giving favoritism. You can't look like you're inconsistent. So you got to adhere to the scope, and you got to watch goal plating, and you got to watch inconsistency, and you got to watch favoritism in order to have a good reputation. So those are just some ways to look at it. Now you got to balance. Now the next couple of slides shows each of these concepts related to bureaucracy, adhocracy, or mechanistic versus organic. First, these are the attributes. Slide SD11 shows attributes of skill level. Low-skilled, you'll find more in a mechanistic, bureaucratic organization. High-skilled, more autocratic, organic organizations. That's where it fits better. Technology, if it's low technology, it's better in a mechanistic, bureaucratic organization. If it's very high technology, then it's got to be closer to adhocracy or organic organization. And there's things in the middle. I'm just saying these are the extremes. Availability workers. Availability workers very high, easy to get workers. You can have a bureaucratic organization, but it's very low, very hard to get workers, very hard to get professionals. Then it's got to be more organic and more of an adhocracy. Production volume very high, works well with bureaucracy and mechanistic organizations. Very low production, single units that take a lot of time, very complex. That would be better in a adhocracy. Product complexity, if it's simple, that's better for mechanistic and bureaucracy. If it is very complex, it's more of a adhocracy and organic, and people have to go around and do trial and error basically sometimes to solve problems. Competition, very low competition, bureaucratic organizations, low change. Very high competition, then you got to have something a little more flexible, organic, and adhocracy. Now that's not always the case, because remember, you balance these, right? High production, for example, would be an example. If you have high production, high competition, then you have to use your industrial engineers to get every penny out of your product. Now there's the structural dilemmas divided up between adhocracy or organic and bureaucracy or mechanistic. Here's the way to look at it. Differentiation, if it's high differentiation between the people, then it's adhocracy, organic. If it's high integration, then it's more bureaucracy and more of a mechanistic. You expect to find more gaps in adhocracy and organic organization, and more overlap in a highly bureaucratic organization, mechanistic organization. More underuse maybe in a adhocracy, more overload in a bureaucracy, and we can switch these around depending on the situation. Lack of clarity, adhocracy. Lack of creativity, bureaucracy. Excessive autonomy, adhocracy. Excessive interdependence, bureaucracy. Too loose, adhocracy. Too tight, bureaucracy. Too goalless, adhocracy. Goal-bound, bureaucracy. These are extremes. Remember, these are extremes. They're not this way in every case, because you're going to make a difference by designing it to fit the situation, right? So irresponsibility, adhocracy. Unresponsiveness, bureaucracy. That's the extremes in the extreme cases. Now, some of these, there's exceptions to all of these. So don't take what I just said and go out and just expect everything to always be the same. And this is all the time we have for this podcast. In the next podcast, we're going to look at Mintzberg's structural organizations, configurations. So Mintzberg's structural organizational configurations. That's it. To get a hold of me, Craig A. Stevens at westbrookstevens.com.